to the Dawgs Podcast with your hosts, Blake Reneker, Justin Charles, and Josh All.
Hey, what's up, Browns fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Dawgs Podcast. Josh all alone with you guys here today on the final part of Barry Shuck's breakdown from the Senior Bowl. We've got more prospects to go through today. Great names to keep in your mind if you're doing mock drafts and all these kinds of things heading into draft season, and who the Browns could be getting later on, third, fourth, fifth round, that could contribute and be solid players for the Cleveland Browns. Barry always gives us great names every year that we end up watching get drafted by, unfortunately, other teams, and then they end up making an impact. The Senior Bowl is a big deal, and it produces a lot of high-end, reliable, solid NFL talent. So pay attention to these names, and as we go along, usually don't say this enough, but leave comments, in the comments section, whether you're on Spotify listening or if you're on YouTube watching, all that kind of stuff. We love engaging with you guys in the comments and talking to you and getting your insight and your input on all this stuff too. So let us know how you guys are feeling about these prospects. Today, we wrap things up with linebackers, cornerbacks, safeties, and a kicker. Plus, there's a Barry's idiom. If you guys have been with the show for a couple years now or anything like that, you remember Barry's idioms. It's been a while since we've done one, but we got one here today out of Mr. Shuck. So looking forward to giving that to you guys as well. One thing to note, when we do get to the defensive backfield conversation, Barry and myself got our wires crossed when we first started talking. I thought we were kicking things off with safeties and moving to cornerbacks. Barry was giving me cornerbacks, and then we moved to safety. So I was not in the right mindset when we were talking about the cornerbacks because I thought we were talking about safety. So that's my fault. I just wanted to say that now because there's going to be a little bit of an oopsie when we get there. But still, great information on these prospects. And you guys will see. When Barry talks about it, there's a couple guys in that conversation that the Browns could and hopefully will get in the middle rounds of this draft. So stay tuned for all of that. Make sure you guys check out the previous episodes, the offensive players, the defensive line, all that good stuff. Before we dive in, YouTube, like, subscribe, tap the notification bell. You don't want to miss anything new. We've got a ton of stuff coming out here as the free agency and draft season, all that stuff kicks off. It's going to be a ton of fun. And then obviously leave us 5-star reviews on your podcast apps and all that good stuff. Join thedawgs.com if you want to become a part of the Dog Pack community. Get into the private Discord. Be part of those conversations that are happening all day long, every day. The fantasy football leagues that come up every year. All that good stuff. It's a ton of fun. Great place to be. Just make sure you guys check it out. Again, $5 a month. And, if you get in there for the first month and, this isn't really for me, then just, leave. You cancel your subscriptions. We won't hold it against you. It's not a big deal, but we hope you stay. And at the very least, check it out and show us a little bit of support there. We really, really appreciate it. So without further ado, the final part of my conversations about the Senior Bowl with Barry Shuck. Here we go. Yeah, so now talking about another weak area for the Browns. Seems to be a weak area every year because they don't put a whole lot of emphasis on this position, whether it's free agency. They don't trade for these guys. They've only ever drafted one of these guys high, and it was JOK, and now he's uncertain with the neck injury. But What linebackers did you see in Mobile that piqued your interest for Cleveland?
Yeah, and the reason the Browns don't put that much emphasis onto linebackers is because of analytics. Analytics say, pay edge rushers, pay cover corners, pay one stud receiver, pay the quarterback, and then everybody else gets peanuts. If they pay somebody $3-4 million at any position, they could be lined up right beside somebody that's making $20 million. But analytics say don't pay the linebackers. And so it's always a crapshoot with Andrew Barry that he brings in guys, and it's a revolving door. Remember Joe Schubert? He was top 4 or 5 every year in the league in tackles when his 4-year contract, which he was drafted in the 4th round, when his 4-year contract ran out and it was time for his big contract, they let him go. They let him test free agency, and he signed with Jacksonville. They didn't want to pay him because analytics say, don't pay this guy $13 million a year. And that's just the way it is. That's why they let J.C. Treader go. He was set to make $10 million a year. Well, we're not going to pay a center that much because analytics say don't pay centers, don't pay defensive tackles, don't pay safeties, and don't pay linebackers. At the Senior Bowl, the best linebacker there was Demetrius Knight from South Carolina, 6'2", 245, runs a 4.62 in the 40. Great kid. I spent some time with him. I actually did some research on him before I got to the Senior Bowl because I wanted my questions to be tailored to him instead of just being generic defensive questions. Played quarterback in high school. When he got to South Carolina, they switched him over to the other side, and they found out he was a hitter. He's a devastating downfield trigger. He's got that explosive first step. He's an absolutely stud as far as tackling abilities. He's got natural instincts and showed outstanding timing and acceleration when attacking protection schemes late as an add-on rusher. He's got a powerful hit, delivers. We saw several jarring hits at the Senior Bowl, and he's got a big enough frame, like I said, 245 pounds, that's going to drive through a player. He's quick in pursuit. I asked him, I said, how do you handle tight ends that are taller than you and bigger than you? You know, a tight end could be 260, 270, 6'5", 6. Keep manhandling so that he understands that you're in his back pocket and he's more concerned with you than he is with the ball coming in. He flashed some impressive zone coverage awareness, especially in the underneath drops, where he could read a quarterback's eyes. And he did have a good break on several throws, especially in the 7-on-7s. On the 1-on-1s, they pair linebackers up with running backs. He did fairly well with that, although most running backs were faster than him. But he didn't get fooled on jukes too much. He didn't take the head bob. He didn't take the shoulder dip. He stayed in one position and waited for the player to break. They didn't, in the 1-on-1s, they didn't match him up, linebackers up with tight ends. They did that with safeties the majority of the time. But he's got natural leadership abilities. He's one of these COVID guys where he played 5 years in college and got an extra season. So he's a little bit more mature and has a mature approach to the game. But I thought he brought a professional mindset and showed great preparation.
Man, does that ever sound like the type of guy we need in that linebacker room? I was so excited last year when we took Buki Watson. Thought that he was going to have a little bit better of a rookie year than what he did, but the circumstances are what they were. But I interviewed him and he was a good guy to talk to and everything. But as far as Knight goes, where do you project him going in the draft?
30.
Okay.
Late first round.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So this is the top, probably the top guy or one of the top guys.
Yep. Yeah, he definitely is. I thought who played out really well this year was Winston Reed.
Yes, absolutely.
That dude will lay people out. Absolutely lay people out.
Yep. I'm glad you mentioned that because it's, you get a couple months removed from the season and you start to kind of forget some of these other names and different positions. But yeah, Winston Reed for a UDFA last year, man, I'll tell you what, Andrew Barry, some of these draft picks he makes don't develop into anything, but does he ever have a knack, or at least that scouting department front office, they've got a knack for getting these UDFA guys in here. I mean, Mohamed Diabate, another guy at linebacker that's just like, holy crap, this guy's actually pretty good.
Yeah, and Diabate played a lot of games.
Yes.
I was surprised that Devin Bush played as many games as he did, especially after Tony got shipped off and got cut. But Diabate played in a lot of games. He played in 13 games this year with 11 starts. Once JOK went down, that's who they went to. I thought they were going to keep Tony Fields, and I thought they were going to put Devin Bush in JOK's spot, but it was Diabate that did. And Reed's good in special teams, but he had a lot of games and a lot of snaps this year and really showed out. Devastating hitter, extremely, and he's a big body guy. A lot of these linebackers are 220, 225, and I'm glad to see the heavier guys. You know, back in the day when the Giants had big defenses and the Bears had big defenses, all their linebackers were 6'4", 255, all of them. Carl Banks, you know, Harry Carson, guys like that, Mike Singletary, they were all big guys that didn't have the speed, but they could lay into you and lay you out. And teams now are getting guys that are 6 foot, 215, 220, that can go sideline to sideline. They can play 4 downs that are speedier. And that's what they're going with. Well, they miss more tackles. They don't make as many tackles. And it seems like Barry's bringing in bigger guys at the tackle position.
Yeah,
position.
Yeah, I think you need both. I think you need the guys that can cover sideline to sideline because it's the league is more passing now than it was back then, but you still need the big guys. You still need the guys that can stuff a gap, lay people out, and you know, sure tackling type of linebackers, which, aside from Knight, who else did you see at the Senior Bowl?
A guy from Minnesota named Corey Lindenberg. He's 240, 6'3", runs a 4.62 in the 40. Sideline to sideline guy. I saw him to be very instinctive. He's got, I would say, elite diagnosis skills pre-snap. He consistently put himself and his teammates in position to make plays. He was able to recognize formations and tendencies. He was able to cover the bigger tight ends. He's got a high production guy, advanced mental processing, which leads to quick trigger reactions against the run. Very good against the run. He excels at pattern matching in zone coverage. He's also, this is something else, Josh. I don't see a reason why we should bring anybody in that doesn't have is not a reliable tacklers. I just don't understand why we would have guys that are not gonna be in a position to make tackles, can't run sideline to sideline, and that's something that Lindenberg is.
Well, that is definitely what we need. The missed tackle thing, we harp on it. I feel like it's every season. There's more missed tackles than there should be, and we're one of the league leaders in missed tackles and all this kind of crap, and kind of just get tired of it. And I think a lot of it does stem from not putting and I understand the analytics say don't pay and invest high in the linebacker position, but it's such an important position. And this is the type of guy, the elite processing is what I like to hear, because that does put you in position before the snap even happens to make that play. And I think a lot of missed tackles, you know, those things stem from being out of position, being caught off guard, not exactly knowing what was coming before, you know, all that kind of stuff, and just not being totally alert, where a guy like Lindenberg sounds like he could be that dude.
Yeah, he's had 94 tackles last year. He's not a big sack guy. He's not a big blitzing guy. He's not a big pass rushing guy. He's a guy that's going to be run stoppage focused. He's a guy that's going to be good on pass protection. He had 6 pass knockdowns last year. So that means he's involved in the pass coverage game. But don't expect him to be in the backfield a lot. I'm not saying he can't be trained to do that. I've got him ranked as a 4th round pick. That's where Schobert was. That's where a lot of, linebackers that you plug and play end up being. So this is the guy that we could pick on day 2 that would come in highly productive as far as tackling, very sure tackling, and just an impressive guy.
He reminds me, the way you're describing him, of J.D. Bertrand from Notre Dame last year. You came on this podcast with me and you talked about Bertrand, and that, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that's what you described was intellectual, just processor, knew where to be, made the tackle. I mean, he was a sure-handed tackler, all that kind of stuff. And, you know, the Browns didn't get him, obviously, but he was a guy that I was very interested in after talking to you about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that's Knight, Lindenberg. Anybody else at the linebacker position?
No, those are the only two
Okay.
that I made a lot of notes on. I thought that they were the two standouts. And see, that would give the Browns an option in the beginning of the second round and then on day 2.
I like that too. I like having a higher end option where you're going to have to invest a little more to go get, or there's also this other guy, you can wait another day, grab him, and I think you're going to get similar to maybe even the same production or whatever. But, you know, you talking about them not even getting into the backfield that often and things like that. We just watched the Eagles beat the living daylights out of the Chiefs, rushing 4. They didn't blitz once the entire game. They got all their pressure, rushing 4 against that offensive line of the Chiefs. And if you can create a defensive line that can bring that pressure, you don't necessarily need your linebackers coming in and doing those blitz plays all that often. Am I right?
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Hey, Browns fans, we're excited to tell you guys about the new season of Living for We, the award-winning podcast from Idea Stream Public Media as part of the Connecting the Dots Between Race and Health initiative. This awesome podcast is hosted by Marlene Harris Taylor. Season 1 focused on livability for Black women in Cleveland, but Season 2 explores the most pressing mental health epidemic facing the greater Cleveland area, and that is gun violence. Gun violence is the leading cause of death for young people in these neighborhoods, and every bullet fired creates 2 victims, the person in front of the gun and the person pulling the trigger. So join host Marlene Harris Taylor, joined by her new co-host, Maisha Watkins, director of the Cleveland Peacemakers Alliance, as they highlight the untold stories and spotlight local heroes who are already in the trenches working for change. This season provides real talk and real solutions from both the victims of gun violence and the perpetrators with a story to tell. New episodes are released every other Tuesday starting February 11th. Subscribe now to Living for We on your favorite podcast app or watch the video version on IdeaStream's YouTube channel. Learn more at ideastream.com/podcast/living-for-we. So that's okay. So we got defensive linebacker. So let's move into the defensive backfield and let's talk about some of the safeties that you saw at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, the most impressive was a guy named Trey Amos from Ole Miss, 6'1", 190, runs a 4.42. Now, he's a first-round guy. He'll be late first round. If the Browns want him, they're going to have to do something with their second-round pick and move up to get him. I don't know if you realize this or not, but Andrew Berry takes a defensive back in every draft.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he does.
He's taken one safety, and all the rest have been cornerbacks. He's a former college quarterback himself, so he knows how important this is. Amos is a plant and drive type guy. He's got he can showcase quick twitch explosion, and he's able to stay with receivers. He's able to mirror receivers. He's got loose hips and fluid transitions. His separation is minimal. They did a lot of one-on-ones with cornerbacks and receivers. He's a guy that doesn't really take a fake. He kind of stands his ground and waits for the receiver to make a move. As a former linebacker myself, we're taught to watch stomachs. We're not taught to watch helmets and shoulders and knees and stuff. Wherever the stomach goes, that's where the player goes. So if you watch the stomach, same thing if you play soccer. A guy comes up with the ball and he's got some good moves and he's got good foot skills. If you're playing defense and you watch the stomach, the player doesn't go anywhere. Amos is a quick processor with receivers, and he waits to see what their move is going to be. He's got good triggers downhill with urgency, and he defends blocks well with active hands. He's got a strong punch as far as meeting a receiver with that first 5 yards, and he shows matchup acceleration when he does get beat, and he's able to close with a cushion quickly with effective footwork, and he does have angle discipline.
Sounds like the total package, man.
Yeah, a good player, nice kid, well-spoken, got real good speed. I think his closing speed is what impressed me the most, because in the Senior Bowl, a lot of these receivers like Tez Johnson have got these moves, and they're so quick, and they're not doing just one move; they're doing 2 moves and sometimes 3, and they fool a lot of people. Amos was a bit. If he did get fooled for a second, he was able to close and get right back on his receiver and allow minimal separation.
That's huge, because there is such an emphasis right now in the NFL, today's NFL, on wide receivers being able to create separation with their route running and their juke moves and their play, their head fakes, all that kind of stuff in that intermediate area where the safeties are. And if you got a guy at safety who can minimize that distance, because these receivers are going to get separation. I mean, if they're out there playing for an NFL team, that means they're good, usually, and they can create separation. So if you got that closing speed and you can cut that down on those guys, that's big.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and that's part of it.
Yeah, so that would be more your like late first round type of player, I think you were talking about. So who would be somebody a little bit later on in the draft that the Browns could get at safety?
I'm going to give you Quincy Riley. He's more of a third round guy. Now, last year, Andrew Berry drafted Harden in the 6th round. So don't think that I know they got Martin Emerson Jr. in the 3rd round, and he's pretty much reached. They got Greg Newsome in the 1st round, but this guy Quincy Riley, he's 6 foot, right on the nose, 195. He runs a 4.5. He is more quick than he is fast, but he's got elite ball skills. Now, it's also a gambler, so he's consistently jumping routes. But what this also does is he gets more batted balls and more interceptions than normally you would with a cover guy. He's got natural instincts. His timing is real good, knowing when to jump a route. He's scheme versatile. He's also got, in talking with him, he's also got a high football IQ. So he displays excellent route recognition. He's a former receiver himself in high school, so he understands different routes in the route tree. Solid tackler. The guys that I talked to all had tackling abilities. None of them were missing tackles or whiffing on tackles, which is just hard to watch when guys do that. He's a durable player. He was not hurt in college, not hurt in high school. He does have special teams value right off. He's got the bonus of being a dangerous return man in high school. He didn't return. He returned only 1 punt in college, and that was as a freshman. But he's a solid tackler. He wraps up well, and he does limit the yak yards after he does make contact.
Now, is this somebody that you could see coming in and giving us some relief when Juan Thornhill's not in the game? Because I feel like that was a move to sign him a couple years ago, and he has just not delivered, in my opinion, for the Browns, the way that we expected him to.
Yeah, no, Juan Thornhill. I did an article this week on brownies and frownies on free agent signings for Andrew Berry through his career, and John Johnson and Juan Thornhill. I put together. They're both, Job Thornhill and can't make a tackle. John Johnson. Both of them look like they're not interested in tackling. Both of them look like they're not interested in getting involved in a play. And I think a lot of times when guys make their contract. I remember I was writing for a Giant site back in the day, interviewed Keith Hamilton. He admitted to me, he said, I got a 4-year contract, my second contract. For the first 3 years, I just kind of, was out there. He said, it wasn't until I had my contract year that I didn't even try. So a lot of these guys like Thornhill, the Browns contract is his second contract where he makes bank. Came in as a Super Bowl winner. We need guys that are hungry. I think this guy, Quincy Riley, is more of a Cam Mitchell type of guy that's going to come in and be dependable, going to be a solid tackler, and be a durable player that's going to come in for guys when they get hurt and fill in, that has special teams value as well. That's more who I'm going to compare him to. As far, he's not going to be starter material right off. He's going to be a prospect right off. He's going to be a special teams guy to go down and make tackles on punt, especially on punt returns. But I think he can develop into a starter sooner than later.
Well, that'd be great because honestly, Jog Thornhill, whatever. I like what Ronnie Hickman has done over his first 2 years. I feel like he has developed, talking about UDFAs that this team has brought in. And obviously those guys are hungry because they're barely making it. They have the quickest path off the team as a UDFA. They weren't drafted and all that kind of stuff. So Hickman, I thought, has played very well. And I'd like to see him obviously continue to take steps forward and continue to develop. There's something about the Browns, and maybe this is with every NFL team. I don't know. I don't follow all the teams closely or anything like I do the Browns, but I feel like we've talked about this on the show a lot. We're so analytically driven that I think we overlook the football aspect of a lot of the team building. And there's some football things about players that I think need to be better evaluated rather than just looking at the analytics of, well, this guy has, this is his size, his age, his speed, his metrics, all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. These are his numbers. But who is the person? Is he a hungry guy? Is he going to come in here and the high motor? Can he fight every play? Does he just want to play and win? Does he love the game? Or, once he starts getting a couple $100,000 checks here and there, and it's like, wow, my bank account looks pretty good, better than it ever did, I'm done. There's definitely some of that with these guys. So I feel like we don't always evaluate that the best way.
Yeah. Another thing about Riley, he's got 8 interceptions in college. 8.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. He, last year he had 33 total tackles, 109 total for his college career, but that means he's around the ball all the time. 27 pass defenses.
Wow.
27.
I mean, I think he would only
13 last year. Yeah. I mean, he's just a ball hawk, always around the ball, got good closing speed. So that'd be a great guy to bring in the third round to compete, be a good guy to bring in nickel situations, dime situations, special team guy. I think in his second year, he's going to be pushing for playing time.
That's great. I mean, heck, he only needs one pass defense or one interception to have more than Jog Thornhill in 2 years.
Yeah. Jog Thornhill.
Yeah. I love that nickname. Cracks me up. Any other safeties you wanted to talk about here?
No, that's not safety. That's corners.
Oh, these were the corners?
Yeah, those were the corners.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, well then scratch that. I thought we were doing safeties there. Well, let's switch it over then to any safeties that you saw.
So let's go to safety. Yeah. The best safety I saw at the Senior Bowl was Sebastian Castro. He's really the only one I looked at, the only one I talked to. I didn't really spend a whole lot of time with the safety group. I wanted to look at cornerbacks more because I know Andrew Berry brings in, but I know we need a safety with Rodney McLeod being retired. We got D'Anthony Bell, who's a free agent. Ronnie Hickman is still developing. So there's a little bit of the unknown with the safety. Sebastian Castro is an absolute thumper. 5'11", 205, runs a 4.6 in the 40. Just a great guy. I can tell he's a hungry guy. These defenders, these defensive backs that come out of Iowa, if you get an offensive lineman or a defensive back from Iowa, he's going to produce for you. This Castro is an explosive accelerator, and he's got enough speed and has the ability to close on ball carriers very quick. He showcased, in my notes, they showcased elite short area quickness, and he's just got a burst when attacking downfield in the 11 on 11s. He's a versatile defender. I asked him, I said, would you have a problem playing a linebacker position? Because Jim Schwartz sometimes plays a lot of 4-2-5. He said, I love playing the linebacker position. He said, I'm a versatile defender. I can play box. I can play free safety. I can play out on the edge. I can play in the slot if that's what's needed. And going through practice, he played a lot of those positions. An aggressive tackler. I mean, extremely aggressive tackler. I'm not saying he made all the tackles he went after. I'm not saying he got there in time, but he's a quick twitch athlete with the ability to mirror a tight end and man coverage. And I thought he was particularly effective against the slot targets in short to intermediate areas when he was dropping back in zone coverage.
Man, that sounds great. Like that definitely sounds like the kind of guy we need.
Yeah. Let me see what his grade is. Third round.
Okay. All right.
We're picking number 94. I think we got we're picking 67 and 94. I think the 67 pick is where he'd more be likely to be available early in the third round, because we're tied with two other teams, the Giants and the Titans, for the worst record. So every round where we pick is different. The first round we're picking second round we're picking first, the third round we're picking third, and it alternates like that with the three teams all the way through the round. So we're picking third in the third round. That'd be a great place. And what that also does is with the analytics, instead of saying we're going to take a guy in the first round, we're going to take a guy in the second round, analytics would say, yeah, we can do that. We can take a guy number 67 and pay him third round money and bring him in, and then we get an absolute thumper in the same breath.
That sounds great. That's definitely a guy that I'm going to be keeping my eyes on as the draft rolls along. Okay, so Castro. How about anybody else at the safety position from Mobile?
No, he was the only one that I made any kind of notes about.
Okay.
I just didn't. I wanted to spend more time with cornerbacks because I knew that Andrew Barry was going to take a guy, and I just wanted to be prepared with that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he takes a corner every year, and typically, I mean, obviously, they're not all going to be home run hitters or anything like that because he's taken them in different rounds, but I feel like he's gotten good value with the guys. Cam Mitchell, Miles Harden last year. Obviously, Martin Emerson has been great value for a third-round pick. A lot of people don't like Greg Newsome, but I don't think he's been bad. I just don't think that he has been elite, but again, how many guys coming out of the first round each year reach elite status? Not very many, maybe a handful. So for what he was drafted to be.
And Miles Harden, he got hurt.
Right.
Then he came back later. I did an interview with Miles Harden early, like in training camp, and he was a hungry guy. Now, I'll tell you, I know that's all the defensive positions. I'm going to give you another guy that I interviewed, and I think it's a need position, and we're going to have to address it either in free agency or in the draft, and that's kicker.
This episode is sponsored by Omaha Steaks. Browns fans, if you're like me, you're counting down the days to April, and not just because it's the NFL draft and the Browns have the second overall pick, but because the weather will finally start getting nice again. But during these cold months of winter, there's nothing better than comfort food to get you through to the warm days ahead. And right now, during Omaha Steaks semi-annual sale, you can get 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com, plus get an extra $30 off with promo code BARK, B-A-R-K, when you check out. Now, the last thing I want to do in the winter is make extra unnecessary trips outside. So scratch the grocery runs and the takeout pickups and take advantage of this great sale to stock up on the best quality food. When you're ready for a fantastic and delicious meal right at home, you'll have everything you need ready to go from your freezer. And always, always, always add the caramel apple tartlets to your order. They are by far my favorite dessert of all time. So don't miss the semi-annual sale at Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide and for an extra $30 off. Use promo code BARK at checkout. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code BARK at checkout.
And I know we've had issues with kicker. We spent a 4th round on Cade York. We spent a 5th round on Austin Seibert. We spent a 6th round on Gonzalez. And now all those guys are playing for somebody else, and they're not playing for us. But we're going to have to address kicker at some point. We look at the free agents, kickers that are available this year, it's a horrible list. It's guys that have come and gone, like Nick Folk. So are we going to keep Dustin Hopkins? What's your opinion?
Well, I don't have the contract information pulled up in front of me, but we paid him a decent amount for a kicker, which we've talked about that on the show too. Like, I just can't believe the drop off. Like, it needs to be investigated deeply. This needs to be somebody needs to go in and figure out what in the world happened to Dustin Hopkins, because he had a career season and then had a career bad season. I mean, he was the worst kicker in football last year. So I guess the career season obviously is an outlier because it was the best of his entire career, but he was never this bad. I mean, that was horrible what we just witnessed.
Yeah, it was. And we're talking about short kicks.
Yeah.
We're not talking about 58-yarders that he missed consistently. We're talking about short kicks, 37, 38, 29. He just fell off the face of the earth.
He sure did. And it was, like you said, short kicks, but PATs. I mean, just line it up straight and kick the ball. Everything. I mean, he was hooking everything left, and then you could see him. Then he would miss it, come back for the next kick, and he would try to overcompensate, push everything right. And it's like, dude, you're killing us. You are absolutely killing us. So I agree. They're going to have to do something about the kicker position. So who'd you talk to?
Well, there were 2 kickers at the Senior Bowl. One was Ryan Fitzgerald from Florida State. He didn't miss a kick all year, but he only attempted 13. I didn't want to interview him. I wanted somebody, Florida State had issues with their offense. They didn't get down inside the 30 enough to attempt a lot. 13 for 13, okay. I just wanted a guy that had done quite a bit, and Fitzgerald was only a 2-year starter. This guy was a 3-year starter. His name is Caden Davis from Ole Miss. Before that, he played for Texas A&M. This year, he went 24 for 29, which is 82.8% making field goals. He only missed 2 PATs. He was 109 for 111 in his college career on PATs, and made 43 field goals in 3 seasons. Big kid, 6'3", 200 pounds.
Wow.
The entire time I interviewed, I'm looking up at him. I'm 5'11". I'm looking up at him. And at one point I said, aren't kickers, tiny guys? He said, yeah. He said, that kind of throws people off a little bit that I'm so big. But he's got a huge leg. Hitting from the 52-plus range is not an issue from him. In warm-ups, he was hitting kicks that easily could have been 62, 63 yards. Easily. The kickoffs were out of the end zone. Kickoffs were -8, -9, which is the backside of the end zone. Huge leg. So I think that this would be a guy that maybe in the 6th round, maybe 7th round, because we've got, I think, three picks in the 6th round and one in the 7th round that we got to bring in somebody. Last year they didn't bring in anybody to go against Hopkins. They didn't bring in an extra opponent to go against Corey Bajorges. They just kind of said, you're our guys. And but this year they're going to have to do something. And I think this would be a good kid to draft. I asked him, I said, kickers score all the. I said, who led your team in scoring? He said, I did. He said, I led my team in scoring the last 2 years. I said, why don't people value kickers? And he said, because people think they're a dime a dozen. If you get on any kind of a stretch where you're not making kicks and you're shanking or barely making them, they think they can yank you out, put somebody else in. I did ask him if you're kicking a long kick, do you do something different with the ball? Do you lean it back? Do you lean it left? What do you do? He said, all I need is for the laces to be facing forward. He said, but you leave the ball in the same position, whether you're kicking a 29-yard field goal or a 59-yard field goal. You go through the same progression, the same steps. Everything is the same. You don't change anything, which I didn't understand that. I didn't know that. I just assumed that if you're going to kick the ball farther, that you'd lean the ball back more so that it would get a lower trajectory, but it would go farther because you got to have a bigger lift.
True. Yeah, I didn't know that either. I was never a kicker, so I never really even paid much attention to what they were doing at practice, on those drills and things like that. But, with kicker, it's go ahead.
Here's something that Matt Barr told me in an interview. He said, well, that it's the most unfair play in football, don't you? I said, what do you mean? He said, it's 9 against 11.
Oh, that's true.
And I said to Matt Barr, I said, no. I said, there's 11 players on each side of the ball. He said, well, think about it. The defense can rush 11, right? I said, yeah. I said, normally they hang back 2 guys. I said, but they can rush 11. He said, well, on a field goal or a PAT, you've got the 9 up front. Then you've got the kicker and the holder, and they can't block anybody. So 9 against 11.
That's a good point. I had honestly never thought of it like that.
Never thought about it either. My response to that, oh.
Yep. Oh, okay, cool. That definitely makes sense. I feel like with kicker, and this was the deal with Hopkins, and we talked to I think it was Tyrese Chambers. He tried out, wide receiver, tried out for the Browns last year. Didn't make the team, but he was there in the summer. We talked to him, did an interview, and he said something that we've talked about a ton ever since we talked to him was 90% of football is mental. And I feel like with kicker, that is so especially true because we saw it with Hopkins. Like you miss 1 or 2 and all of a sudden you get down in your mind. And if you're not, I don't want to say he's not mentally strong, but you have got to be able to have a short memory, cut out, hey, I just missed a kick. All right, whatever. I'm not missing the next one. And then go out there and make it. And I know Cade York had a lot of that confidence, but it was like the arrogant confidence. Yep. And then whenever things didn't go well, where was that confidence? It disappeared. And you got to be able to carry that confidence through whether you just made your kick or just missed it and know that, okay, on the next one, I'm getting it. And not say, I hope I can get the next one.
Yeah, just like relief pitchers in baseball.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly.
Goaltenders in hockey, you got to be able to have that mentality and that memory that you just block it right out of your mind. I pulled up the contract for Deskin Hopkins. He is 2025 is his last year, although the Browns do have an option for 2026. He'll make $1.25 million this year. So he's definitely under contract. Doesn't mean that they can't cut him. But he is definitely under contract. we'll just have to see. Bubba Ventrone is one of the best special teams coaches in the league, and he'll figure him out. He'll decide whether they got to bring it. They'll definitely have to bring in a kicker for training camp, and whether he'll beat him out or not. They've got to figure out somebody somewhere. Maybe the CFL's got a guy that they can bring in. But I've looked at the free agent list for kickers, and it's picked over. It's a bunch of guys that haven't had many NFL games that they played in, or they're 42 years old.
Yep. That's how it goes, man. And this year was. It sucked. It was a bad year for the Browns, but it did provide quite a bit of comedy when you think about certain things. I mean, there was the 1 week, I think it was the second Steelers game in Pittsburgh leading up to the game. I believe that's the week that Bubba Ventrone came out and said, yeah, Dustin Hopkins, he fixed a couple things in practice. He's making all his kicks. He's good to go. And then went out against Pittsburgh that weekend and missed a PAT and 2 field goals. And it's like, dude, we have got to fix this position because this guy can't do it anymore. I don't know. I mean, I have no confidence in him. Doesn't mean he can't come out next year and get back to his 2023 version, but I don't have any confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. But we've got to address it. So that was a guy that I talked to. I never did transcribe his interview, but I will. But we've got to do something as far as a kicker goes. And the Senior Bowl had 2 of the nation's best kickers there at the game. So we've got to do something. Now, whether they draft one or bring a guy in, Justin Tucker wasn't drafted. Phil Dawson was drafted. So you can bring in guys that are not drafted and still play kicker and develop them. But if you want one of the best during the season, you better take him with one of your picks. And if we've got 12 picks, there's no reason for us not to draft a kicker. Now, the flip side to that is in recent years, we're like 0-3 with drafted kickers. So, I don't know.
Yeah,
we'll see.
We're not hitting, we don't have a high hit rate on drafting receivers. It doesn't mean you stop trying. I mean, eventually you got to get one. Same way with like defensive tackles, quarterbacks. I mean, we don't hit on these guys very often, but hey, that's what the draft is for. You just, it's a crapshoot, and you just got to keep shooting your shots and relying on your intel and hopefully not as much analytics. But you know how this front office is so analytically driven. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, that's the defensive side of the ball, Barry. Really appreciate all your insight with all of these players. I do have one last thing, and if you don't have this prepared, no big deal. We'll just skip right by it. But I know last week you had mentioned this before the show, and then we never got to it. But you used to do Barry's idioms with us on the podcast, and you had mentioned leave time for an idiom, and we didn't last week. So I wanted to try to get it in here if you have it ready.
Okay. Let me tell you where X's and O's came from.
Okay.
If you've played football, back in the day, it used to be a chalkboard. Now it's a whiteboard. And traditionally, the offensive players are marked down as O's, and the defensive players are marked down as X's. And that's how you do your plays, and that's how you identify which is which side of the ball. Well, originally, where this came from was a quarterback for Army head coach Charles Daly in 1919 grew tired of originally these were all O's on both sides of the ball. And on defense, they would fill in the zeros as dark. Well, in 1919, Army head coach Charles Daly got tired of the tenuous habit and act of having to color in all the defensive. So he took out the O's and colored them in and put X's in instead. And how the double O's got started was there was a guy for Princeton in 1889 that drew up plays. His name was Edgar Poe, and he used checkers as to mark off plays. And then when he took those plays to paper, the red checkers were already a 0. The black checkers were already a 0. So he took the red checkers and just drew a circle took the defensive black checkers, drew a circle, and colored them in. And he put his plays on paper. And then the Army head coach just got tired of doing that, so he just made it into X's.
Hey, it's like such a simple adjustment to fix a tedious problem, but nobody else had done it, right? So that's pretty interesting. And still used to this day.
Yep. Yeah. Well, Josh, I enjoyed my time with you.
Yeah, Barry. Always love talking to you, getting your insight, your intel from the Senior Bowl. Hopefully one of these years we can get down there with you. That would be really cool to come, participate down there and do some of that stuff. But I love getting you on the show, talking about all these guys. And I love Barry's idioms. It's been a while since we've done one, and I'm glad we were able to get it in here today.
Yeah, and for Browns news, go to dogsbynature.com. We've got stuff up every day. Tomorrow or the next day, I've got an interview with Stump Mitchell. One of the questions I asked him is that there was a rumor going around that the reason he got fired was that he was a media leak. And he told me the answer to that. Another thing he told me, and I don't know if I led him into a question, but we talked about Baker Mayfield and his shoulder surgery. And I asked him if they had fixed his shoulder when it happened, would he still be the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns? And he told me his answer to that as well. That'll be tomorrow, the next day, maybe Sunday, one of these days. But former running back coach, Stump Mitchell. But I enjoyed my time with you, Josh, and good luck with your baby.
Thanks, Barry. I really appreciate it. And that wraps up everything from the Senior Bowl with Barry Shuck from dogsbynature.com. Like he said, go check out the website. Give him a follow on Twitter at Barry_Shuck. Great information. This guy, I tell you what, he comes in every year firing darts and all these hot fire names and everything because, like I said at the beginning of this show, a lot of guys that Barry talks about from the Senior Bowl go on to make an impact in the NFL early, whether it's as a rookie or at least by year two. These are names that when you're watching other games and things, you're like, oh, or at least me anyway. I watch them, I think, Barry talked about that guy. That guy was at the Senior Bowl. I remember doing a podcast about this player, that name or whatever. So these are definitely names not to just shrug off. These are the guys. First of all, the Senior Bowl is a great game of the best players in the country anyway. And then these names, Barry really breaks it down and limits it to the top guys at each position. So go back, make sure you guys didn't miss any of these episodes. If you're on YouTube, I'm breaking it down, chopping up and posting each individual prospect segment so you can catch all of those individually if you missed any and there's like somebody or a couple guys in particular that you're interested in. So that will be there for you guys as well. Again, we appreciate everybody tuning in. And one last plug, head to jointhedogs.com if you want to become a part of our Dog Pack community, become an official Dog Pack member. It's a ton of fun, and it's a great way to support the show. So again, that's it for Senior Bowl prospects, at least from Barry Shuck, but it will not be even close to the end of prospect season for the Dogs podcast. We're going to be doing so much more as the months go on here, getting closer and closer to April. So stay tuned. Notification bell tap. That's going to help you guys make sure you don't miss any of the new stuff. There's going to be a lot of it coming. We're really excited, and we appreciate you guys sticking with us, tuning in, and following the show. So until I see you guys in the next one, let's go Brownies.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Dawgs Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Twitter at the Dawgs Podcast. Get your thoughts on the show at thedogspodcast.com.
This episode is brought to you by Danger Coffee. Browns fans, we talk about how Danger Coffee is made free from mold toxins that are in 45% of the world's coffee, but that's not all that Danger Coffee has to offer. Mineral and nutrient deficiencies are a big deal. They make you feel sick, tired, stressed, and they can give you brain fog. These deficiencies negatively affect your immune system, your digestion, sleep, metabolism. Have you ever wondered why you get an initial burst from your coffee, but then you get that little crash not long after? Danger Coffee's patent-pending process remineralizes your body with more than 50 trace minerals and electrolytes, leaving you more energized, engaged, powerful. These micronutrients enter the cells to boost performance. They bind to toxins to provide detoxification support. I know that sounds like a lot, but the bottom line, guys, is minerals matter, and most of us really don't get enough of them on a daily basis. Danger Coffee delivers micronutrients, plus it gives you access to the minerals you already have. Head to dangercoffee.com, use our code DAWGS, DAWGS, for 10% off your order. And that code can be used over and over. So you get 10% off every order you make using code DAWGS. It's time to start every day off with a cup of coffee that gets you going and actually keeps you going. Dangercoffee.com, code DAWGS.